Welcome to the Lighthouse Conversations, a podcast featuring entrepreneurs and tastemakers from the world of arts, culture, tech, and food. I'm your host, Hashem and Mai. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love it if you could share it with a friend or two. You can also listen to our extensive catalog of previous episodes, like my conversation with Egyptian restaurateur Ayman Bai, the fantastical co-founders of Bokja, Huda Baroudi and Maria Hibri, award-winning Egyptian artist Maha Ma'moon, and so many more. I'm joined on the show today by cultural strategist Mai Eldib. Mai has been working with Sotheby's for more than a decade, since her days as a fresh college grad back in 2008. So I've known Mai for a number of years, so there was a lot to talk about, from her evolving career in the art world to, of course, my upcoming 50th birthday.
So what are you doing for your big 5-0? It needs to be a big shebang.
المواضيع الحساسة بقى.
So my aspiration in life is to become like Wahda. I have a huge girl crush on اسمها Igilet. She has this store in the UK, like concept store, which I'd love to do in Cairo. And she's like an influencer and she's like a design person. And she has this amazing property in the countryside called Oakley Court, where it's like a hotel. So that's like my dream, to become like her. And she's only 4 years older than me.
In what ways does this relate to me? Because it was really about me, I thought. I'm not
Because
sure. How did we make it about you? This whole conversation, if it doesn't pivot back to me, we have a problem.
She just had her 40th birthday at her property. You need to do a huge party. I'm happy to arrange it.
خلاص يلا.
يلا. But I'm
نجيب
very
الشلة. Can
I'm
you
very
invite
exp-
Fifi?
Very
They're
expensive.
معلش أنا. I can afford it. Part of being 50 is you can afford it. Now, if I can't afford it, then the whole thing is off. يعني. Self-wealth these days. It's all about self-wealth. يعني ما قصدي. Mai has authored a new book called Cairo Eternal with publishing house Asoline. I wanted to sit down with Mai to learn how the book came together, how, as a somewhat of an outsider to Cairo, because she's from Alexandria, naturally, she was able to see the city without trafficking nostalgia, as my friend Nadia Wasif likes to call it, and how she used Instagram to source some of the 250 images that became part of the book, and the one important photo she missed out on. Why was I not in the book?
I think, honestly,
I just think that everybody's thinking that. يعني.
honestly, I think you left Cairo a bit
Early?
Yeah, before I came to Cairo.
Too early, yeah. I may have left too early.
You may have left before I came to Cairo, so I think that's the problem.
Yeah, that is the problem.
I think if you were still there.
Although we just talked about this, it is my 50th birthday next year.
Yes.
You could have waited a year and relaunched the book as me and the book.
An homage to you.
Yeah, homage to me for my birthday.
Absolutely.
Which I feel would have, we could maybe reinterpret the book.
I don't know how I missed that.
Yeah, I don't know how.
I think I need to speak to someone.
I think you should speak to someone.
Absolutely.
Remains unnamed who, but yes, you should speak to someone.
I will definitely speak to someone.
Okay. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into it. Congratulations. You published a beautiful book on Cairo with Asoline. Talk to us first. How did this project come about?
Okay, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. This is my first podcast.
Yes.
I feel very special.
You are special. With or without the podcast. But the podcast makes you more special.
More special.
Yeah.
So how did this come about? Well, essentially, it goes back to Dubai in a way, in a very funny way. So, as you know, Mirna Ayed, who was one of your guests on the podcast.
She was my first guest.
Your first guest, wow. So, Mirna is a very good friend of mine, and she had just published her Dubai Wonder book. And I'm like, oh my God, Dubai has a book, Cairo doesn't. We need a Cairo book. So I'm like, Mirna, since you already have a relationship with Asoline, do you mind plugging it like Cairo, and I do it? She's like, absolutely. And Mirna pushes it, and I honestly I don't know how, and it happened just so quickly. It happens, and I start writing this Cairo book for Asoline.
And it's even more amazing because you're actually not from Cairo.
No.
So let's talk about that. Because that's very interesting. No, I'm going to give the context to non-Egyptians. Because obviously...
I think a lot of people don't get...
No, they don't get.
They don't get why I'm also so giddy about the fact that I'm not from Cairo.
We're going to explain that for anyone from Cairo, this includes me, to have an Alexandrian write about Cairo is like the cardinal sin. And vice versa. Yani, obviously.
Absolutely.
If the book was about Alexandria, I think even worse, probably. Yeah. Because Alexandrians are very hardcore.
Very hardcore.
Yeah.
Not only that, I'm also very hardcore Alexandrian.
No, I know you are.
And proud.
Absolutely. You have an annual pilgrimage to Alexandria with all the art lovers. And you've done so much Alexandria. I agree. I actually love it because in some ways, obviously, you are a super insider. You're Egyptian. You grew up there. You live there. You know everybody. You have a lens and an editorial eye. On another sense, you actually did not grow up in Cairo, so you are using that also, and I think it shows up in the book. Tell us about your thinking process.
I've always like this is something that's very interesting. So I'm from Alexandria. I still live between Alexandria and Cairo, and I'm in Egypt, and I'm very proud of being from Alexandria. And everyone always loves to say Alexandria, you know, the village, and it's like, yes, it used to have this huge glorious past, but now not so much. And Cairo has sort of overtaken it in a very strong way. And I grew up always going to Cairo. And I have these memories, and no, I'm going to, and this is like the first paragraph, and can I use Arabic?
صح, yeah, you can.
أنا رايحة مصر.
أيوة.
أنا
You
أنت
start
رايحة
with
فين؟
it.
أنت رايحة مصر. مصر. But Masr is Egypt. So
Yeah.
why is Cairo essentially Egypt? And it is.
Yeah.
Because
And every Egyptian calls it Masr.
Masr.
Yeah.
It is. Cairo is the motherland in the sense. Like everyone, if you want to succeed in Egypt, you're going to Cairo. You're not going
Correct.
to Alexandria
Correct.
anymore.
You've
Maybe-
never heard of an Egyptian that stayed in Alexandria, or you've heard, but very rarely.
I just want to say also, every single successful businessman in Cairo right now is originally from Alexandria. We can cut that, but
No, it's true.
But it's-
artists, Mahmoud Said, so many artists, the
Mahmoud
Wanlis.
Said, Wael Shawqi,
Yeah,
Saif Wanli,
100%.
a lot, like
So
a lot
many.
of it is rooted in Alexandria.
If only Mo Salah was from Alexandria, the whole story would have been finished.
Well, we have some people. We have a fantastic woman race runner. I'm not sure if.
لا, but that's not quite the same. مع احترامي للwoman runner, I'm sure she's great, بس يعني.
No, she's fantastic.
But it's not Mo Salah.
It's not Mo Salah.
Now, if you find his mother, maybe we can attribute him to Alexandria, then it would.
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's attributed to Alexandria. But there are great Alexandrians, 100%. So for me, seeing Cairo, I am a local, but I'm not a local as well because
Which is what makes it so interesting.
Yeah, there are so many parts of this book that, like, I remember the first time visiting Islamic Cairo. Like, I remember it.
So I felt that in the book. So there are elements that are very insider in the sense of, I'm talking about the photography predominantly, you know, an insider lens, how somebody from the city would look at it. Then there are parts that have felt insider outsider, which I think is very you, essentially, because you've probably seen some of these images at a later stage in your life, not the moment you were born. And then there are, of course, images that I found, frankly, to be very honest, a little Orientalist, which may be the editorial choices Asolin made and whoever, doesn't matter. But those all came together as a pastiche, essentially, in this book.
So, first of all, you have to know who the audience is. I don't essentially think the audience is
Egyptian.
like, yes, a certain a group of Egyptians will buy this book who
Yeah,
would
and
like
have it as a coffee table
have as
book.
a
Or
coffee table book. I was actually surprised that anyone would read the essay because I don't know.
I read the essay.
You
of
read
course.
that, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you?
it's up.
You're
Well, I have to also prepare for this
and you're a
podcast.
literary connoisseur. You're like someone who named your space after Virginia
I,
Woolf.
I forgive you. I forgive you for not putting me into a book.
Yes,
This is fine.
But like, essentially, everyone I know who's owned any of these Asolin books, they're just coffee table books. Like, they've never read the essay. So I wanted to also like see how it is that we can grab and capture the audience visually through these like insider images of what I think is my Cairo, what I see as Cairo, what I see as a contemporary Cairo that's thriving, that's young, that's vivacious, but also these like nostalgic images, which are so important. And everyone likes to harp on like these beautiful images from the past. And they are beautiful. And they are essentially part of our history. And there's also like these kitsch images which define Cairo and are for a touristic audience that wants to come and see this part of Cairo.
And some of us even romanticize it. I mean, Nadia Wasif, a dear friend, is in the book.
Yes.
And one of her quotes is about romanticizing Cairo. I find myself doing the same thing. And that's okay. Like, there's no sin.
There's absolutely no sin in romanticizing Cairo and having this element of nostalgia.
مزبوط.
I have this with Alexandria effectively all the time. I live in an Alexandria that doesn't exist anymore. It's an Alexandria of my making, of what I've read about it. I never actually physically experienced the Alexandria I love.
Of day to day.
No.
When I was a student, a college student, I worked on a guide on Cairo called Let's Go, which was a guide ran by the Harvard Student Agency, which was about Egypt, like kind of on a budget, right?
Okay.
The lady before me, that did it the year before, the student actually, was 1 year ahead of me, Haneen, I'll never forget. I called her to ask her for advice, even though I was from Egypt and she was not, she was Palestinian. She said, you know, I went to parts of Cairo and you really have to reimagine it. It's like you said, it's in your mind, in your mind's eye, it's not what you see. Muhammad al-Shahid, who did the beautiful architectural survey,
Cairo Observer.
Cairo Observer, also said the same thing.
My take on nostalgia is it's the past minus information. I feel like when you have access to bits of the past, but there are missing fundamental pieces of information to really help you imagine, we'll never be able to reimagine definitely a moment of time that we never even lived, right? It's always going to be a reconstruction of the bits and pieces of details that we have. If we only have an image of a postcard, that's very little information in some way. Of course, it's also not very, very little, because a picture is a lot. But if you have the picture of the postcard with more information about who published it, who took the picture, where is the place, what's it like today, and then some more context, suddenly I think you go from nostalgia to history.
It was a big responsibility in the sense that it's a big thing.
It's a big city.
It's not only is it a big city, it's
the weight of what it means to so many people.
So many people.
All of a sudden, you have a license to talk about
it, and then that's what I'm saying. Like, this is my love letter to Cairo. So don't judge me. And this is me. This is all Mai. It's nothing. Your Cairo can be completely different, and you have every right to have a very different Cairo than the one I have. And you know what? Cairo means many things to many different people.
So let's talk about your Cairo. What, from your point of view, makes it magical?
So definitely, hands down, it's the people.
Okay.
Over and over again.
Okay, thank you coming back to me. That's great. Yeah, that's fantastic.
So over and over again, this is what makes it, I was just having this conversation with someone. You're not anonymous in Cairo. And that's one of the things, you can't be anonymous.
Can you clarify that? What does that mean, you're not anonymous?
So maybe it's not a nice comment to New York. So I lived in New York for 6 years.
That's okay. No, fine.
What?
New York.
I lived in New York for 6 years. And I loved New York. And when I moved there, I thought I'd never leave. And if you're sick and you live in a building and
no one cares,
and your building has a doorman and you haven't left your apartment for 10 days, no one cares.
Yeah, El Bawab will definitely care and come
No, El Bawab is definitely going to ring on your doorbell.
He also is going to think you have an affair. He wants to know who it's with, but that's a different story altogether.
He probably will assume you have an affair.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a Bawab story. Like, one time...
We all have Bawab stories.
No, I know.
Are we going there?
No, it's a very PG story, so it's fine. So my cousin had the keys to my apartment, and I was upstairs asleep. She had the keys, and this is a girl. And she comes up at 12 o'clock. Seconds later...
12 midnight or...
Midnight.
Okay.
5 seconds later, the Bawab, Am Yahya, is ringing my doorbell. Furiously. And I'm like, what the hell is...
أيوة عم يحيى الحكاية.
في ايه؟ في واحدة غريبة دخلت البيت عندك. قلت له عم يحيى معاها المفتاح.
وانت جوه البيت.
وانا جوه البيت.
ما ينفعش.
ما هي مش غريبة. ما هي مش غريبة.
عم يحيى.
How is she? She's not a stranger. She obviously has keys. She obviously has access. And I'm inside the house and I'm fine with it.
So you're getting at the social fabric.
Exactly.
I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that makes Cairo special. But I'm going to just push back here. The same social fabric presumably exists in Alexandria. So that's not unique to Cairo. Maybe it's unique to Egypt.
I think it's definitely unique to Egypt. And for me, Cairo is just... So Alexandria is tiny. It's a tiny, tiny society, and a lot of things that you can't do. So Cairo, contrary to that, you have places where you can experience a lot more music, you can experience a lot more art, you can experience a lot more elements that you don't necessarily have in Alexandria. So that also makes Cairo a lot more interesting.
Do you have more grit in Cairo?
No, I think definitely Alexandria has
really
more.
Okay, that's interesting.
So if you look at the current music scene, a lot of it's coming out of Alexandria.
So it's edgier. So you wrote the book, but you really want to talk about Alexandria, which I feel like. But anyway, I don't want to do Alexandria Cairo thing.
No, there's no competition.
There's definitely competition.
It's not a competition. But if you look at Wiggs, for example, who is one of the most interesting musicians coming out of Egypt right now. He's from Alexandria.
Yeah.
If you look at Afroto, he's also from Alexandria.
Fantastic name.
A lot of no, I urge you to listen to the music because this trap music coming out, trap music coming out of Egypt is fantastic.
100%.
And it's a reflection of the current social times. And they're from Alexandria. And I think the reason they're producing this music is because there is nothing in Alexandria. There's absolutely nothing. In Cairo, there are still a lot of venues, a lot of pockets, a lot of... they all moved to Cairo because essentially that's where they can rise to the next level. And that's what it is. Cairo, it's like you're in the big leagues, and Alexandria, you're not. You're not in the major league.
Do you feel that nights in Cairo are in some ways more magical because perhaps you don't see it that, it's almost like it becomes varnished. It kind of like
It's beautiful.
washes away
It's like you
the
want
dirt and the imperfections and maybe the people to some extent.
Cairo at night is
Yeah.
alive.
I've seen nothing like it anywhere, I don't think.
I don't think there's another city in the world that is like Cairo because it is essentially the city that never sleeps. There is, so someone was telling me, how do you define Cairo? And it's the sound. It is never quiet. Like this idea of silence doesn't exist in Cairo.
When I moved to the States to go to college, my first week I couldn't sleep. I was living in Boston and I realized the reason I couldn't sleep is because it's too quiet.
It's quiet.
It's too quiet. I'm not used to it. I've never had quiet in my life.
But like the New York Times just published an article is that a lot of noise is deadly.
I read that.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
You think it's bullshit?
I'm fine.
I think every Egyptian would be dead by now.
Exactly. We'll all be
Especially
dead. Bullshit.
Caireans.
I had Port Said School in front of me, glaring every morning at 6 o'clock. So I think I'm
No,
okay.
I
I'm
remember
obviously a little edgy, but I'm okay.
By the way, I have that also because I had a school behind me in Alexandria.
كلنا we all did.
And I hear this تحية جمهورية مصر العربية, and I remember saying it. By the way, I had that episode where I was also in the school.
Yeah,
so I
now
used
they
to
call
say,
it trauma. It's fine. We're fine. We're fine. It's
I don't
just very
think
loud noise for a very long period
but
of
it's
time.
not only that. Like, okay, so I live now close to some of where your friends live. I live on Muhammad Mazhar. So
That
right.
was a loaded statement.
What?
That was a loaded.
No.
I live now close to someone. Yeah, wow. Like, yeah. Okay, fine. But yeah. I caught it. I just want you to know.
Why?
Go on. You live near. Where...
No, some of your friends live close to where I'm living.
I get it. I feel it's a little
Oh
loaded.
my God.
صح, guys? Is it loaded or no?
It's not loaded. I think he's just trying to read into it. So, anyways, I live next to where the Hilton, which used to be
Okay.
what's it called? Safir? What was?
Semiramis.
No, Hilton the في الزمالك, the one on the what's it called? It's called Safir.
Safir Zamalek, yeah.
Okay, so they have an outdoor space, and since now it's the summertime season, it's wedding
Parch.
season and mating season. So every night, and I have double glazed windows, okay? I am not kidding. From 8 p.m. to 2 a.m., I am in a cabaret.
Yeah.
The music, first of all, there's not a single English song.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
And it's Arabic music.
Kind of fun though. I have
It
to
is,
say.
but not every night.
Yeah, not every night. Yeah.
Not every
But that's
night.
Cairo. Yeah.
That
There's
is-
nothing you can do.
What are you gonna do? Who are you gonna call?
بالظبط كده.
And if you call them, they're gonna tell
They're
you.
gonna make it louder.
Exactly. So that's my every night during the summer months. And then in the winter, there's also like the Robabikia guy who appears,
It's nonstop.
and the Kalaks. This is the one thing that I never understood. Like when I started driving abroad, I had the beeping, okay? In Egypt, people beep like it's just I think tic nerveux, like beep,
No, it
beep,
is,
beep,
yeah,
beep,
yeah.
beep, everything. And there, like when you get a beep abroad, it's like a disaster. It's like
You're also not really driving. You're looking for a gap where you can insert your car in. I mean,
it's a
not-
Tetris game.
Yeah, it's a Tetris game, exactly. When I moved to the States and I drove for the first time, my friends were like, please stop. You are no longer
Allowed to drive.
Because I thought of it as a Tetris game. You grew up, all you have to think about is where is there an opening where I can insert
and
my car.
And when is the man on this side not going to cross?
بالظبط. You just
Because-
charge and move. It's
Exactly.
a Tetris game, like exactly. As you said.
That is essential.
And then it's a Tetris game for parking back when you could park. Now you can't even park anymore. But saying back when you
now there
try
are,
to park.
Sorry, there are valets.
Yes, exactly.
Valet.
It's all
Valet
changed.
parking.
We'll continue our conversation with Mai about Cairo Eternal and some of the challenges facing the spread of contemporary art in the region right after the short break. Welcome back. I'm Hashem Montasser, and you're listening to my conversation with Mai Eldib. How did you go about, obviously with the other editors, but to choosing images? Did you solicit people for contributions?
So if you know me, you know I'm like a big Instagram person. I'm obsessed with Instagram.
Yeah.
And Instagram was the best tool for finding these images.
And you went viral recently with Fifi Abdou. I mean, who's now your BFF. I mean, I'm just saying.
I would love her to be my BFF, and I would love to like spend a whole day with Fifi Abdou. That would be like a dream of mine.
Fantastic. My day
right?
with Fifi Abdou.
Imagine. So my fascination with Fifi Abdou begins from a long time, but Yusuf Nabil also sparked that, and I was so happy that we have an image by Yusuf Nabil in the book and of Fifi Abdou.
It is. She's lovely.
She's an icon.
Irrespective of Yusuf Nabil, but yeah, I think she's lovely.
She's an icon.
She
She's
really
definitely an icon. And then we were at a wedding this May, and a friend of mine says, "Don't you have Fifi Abdou in your book?" And I'm like, "Yeah, she's in my book." She's like, "Do you have a PDF of the book?" I'm like, "Yeah, I have the PDF on my
Power
phone."
of phones. You didn't have to schlep the whole book with you to
To the wedding.
Yeah.
Imagine what a look.
Yeah.
Would have not
It's
gone.
kind of a cool look, though.
You know, my dress and the book would have matched, definitely. So I open my phone and I go up to her, and she's filming me from the back, and I show Fifi Abdou the picture, and then she is like amazed, like, "Oh my God, I'm in this book." And she's showing every other person around her, "Look at me, look at me."
It's fascinating because she's an icon, and obviously she would be in any book about Cairo or Egypt.
100%.
Yeah.
And then one of her friends, who I have no idea who that is, takes my phone number. هتطلعي معايا على البرنامج. What برنامج? Who is this person? I have no idea. But this person who's a friend of Fifi, who probably a journalist, has my number somewhere. Mai Eldib الكتاب. That's it. That's what I wrote. It's like, what else am I gonna write?
I love that.
Huh? And she has my number, and I have yet to get a call.
That's fantastic.
That was one of my moments of joy.
So I interrupted you. You go to social media to
Yeah.
find images. So
Yeah.
was that your primary research ground?
A lot of the old images are nostalgic images. So those I have, like, you have them like saved. I have a lot of these images that I've referenced as like what it is I see as Cairo. There are like 4 or 5 images that are my own personal images. And then there's a lot of Instagram content. And I don't know if you've seen this picture, you know, the picture of the terrace in Garden City. It's one of my favorite images of Cairo right now, because it touches upon this element of nostalgia. It touches upon like this dilapidated glamour from like the 20th century. It's a beautiful image. So that definitely was one of the images I wanted, and a lot of other images. Also, I really, really wanted to put the faces of now, like the young celebrities, the young fashion brands,
very cool.
the young people. Like, for example, this amazing ice cream maker, Dara's Ice Cream. Like, this is a female
my kids there.
Female entrepreneur
Fantastic.
who created an ice cream brand which has gone everywhere, and it's a great product, and it's
great
Egyptian made.
Yeah.
And you know what? These people need to be celebrated. Zuba, for example, needs to be celebrated.
That was great. Malaika, so many brands. Yeah.
Beano's, like Shahira Diab was a pioneer in like creating the cafe culture.
Sah.
So a lot of these people I really felt were owed, like they needed to be highlighted because they did create something, and they created something that's everlasting.
100%. And how were the quotes selected?
So the quotes were selected, a lot of it were through the editor. So I sent in a lot of quotes that I found that were relevant, and then they picked a lot, and they asked Nadia to do this quote.
Yes, which was lovely. I found personally the quotes a little too Orientalist at times, so I'm just being very honest. Some of them are great. I love Nadia's quotes. I like Max Rodenbeck's quote. There's a good about Hisham Matar. There's one with Naguib Mahfouz, which I want to read because I think it's very powerful.
Yeah, I end my book using that.
It's beautiful. It says, "Home is not where you are born. Home is where all your attempts to escape cease." That's really very powerful.
Home is, for me, Dunya, Egypt, essentially.
So let's pivot to this concept of home, because I mean, Naguib Mahfouz is obviously the Egyptian, author, legend, Nobel Prize winner. We all have very different versions of what is home. Give me your definition of home. And did that, working on this book, change that in any way or impact your view?
I'm going to take a step back.
Yes.
As a person, I have a very weird capacity to like compartmentalize.
Okay.
So I finished the book and
moved on.
And I parked it. So I submitted it in November.
Why is that?
I don't know. I think it's a coping mechanism dealing with Egypt, by the way. Probably.
Interesting. No, but that's very interesting.
Probably because of how much
you put the book, finished it, submitted it. Khalas.
I'm on to the next.
Yeah.
So I submitted it in November 2022. And then all of a sudden, come April,
the book is out.
The book is out. I didn't follow up. I didn't even know it was coming out in April. And I find it on social media, and I'm like, shit, I didn't clock that this was coming out. A lot of people I didn't even tell. So people were like, why are you hiding this? And I'm like, I'm not hiding anything. I actually, I just worked on it. It was a project. I had to deliver it. And I treated it like anything I do at work. There's a project, you have to work on it, you have to submit it, you're done, on to the next. And I think that's also very much part of how I am at work. So I work for Sotheby's, which is an auction house. And essentially all we do is that every season we have an auction. So every season I prep for an auction.
That is probably a big part of it.
And that's it. And you deliver the auction and you're done.
It's, like people who work on major exhibitions, that's how they feel.
Yeah.
It gears up to that very big 3-4 days, then they're done, and then they're on to this next year.
So I'm now on to my next project.
So let's reflect on it now then. Let's take a moment.
Let's do that.
Because I think it's important. Did it in any way change your definition of home or how you look at home after working on this book? Did it change maybe the way you think about, if not from a perspective of home, Cairo, the depth, the warmth, I don't know, the something?
I hate to say this, but no, I think
it's fine.
It's the same for me. Like I would hate to live anywhere else.
It's definitely a coping mechanism, by the way, and we do have therapists for this, so we will discuss this offline. Yeah, for sure.
I would.
The fact that you did not reflect on it at all is definitely a coping mechanism. It probably has to do with all the noise from your childhood because it was so loud, or Safir Zamalek. Yani the Kuwaiti parties in that, yeah, for sure.
But
I'm just putting it together.
I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I'm moving.
You have what's called noise. So when the New York Times was right. This is your coping mechanism.
Moving.
You're moving. You're leaving. You're leaving
no,
Hassan Sabri.
I'm moving across the other side of the bridge.
Yeah.
Which is equally loud.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. But that is definitely a coping mechanism.
But like what I can tell you is definitively, like, I don't have this urge in any way, shape, or form to leave Egypt. Like, I'm not part of these. No, I think Egypt's one of these places, and Cairo specifically, is if you have the capacity to travel and to escape, albeit a week every 6 weeks, you're golden. If you're stuck there for a prolonged period of time...
Most people are stuck there, though.
Yes, most people are.
Yeah.
No, but I'm sorry, Hashem, but a lot of people escape. You can go to Fayoum. You can go... There's a lot more than just...
That's a good point.
Than leaving leaving the country, essentially. Like, during COVID, the 2 years of COVID, I couldn't travel. And I saw so much of Egypt that is so amazing, for lack of a better word. The White Desert, it's 5 hours from Cairo. It's not that.
What's interesting about what you said is that I don't have any plans to leave. I don't even think it's about where you physically live, because I don't live there anymore, but I certainly think of it as home. Nadia Wassef wrote her book about Egypt, Love Letter to Cairo, which, as she says in her book, while she was in London. When we interviewed Mohammed Shah the other day, he was in Mexico. So I think your relationship with your home may change or evolve when you live somewhere else, or even when you travel, like you said. Yeah. But I don't think the depth and the closeness goes away.
Definitely it doesn't go away. And when I left Egypt, 2004 to 2010, I was living in New York. And at that time, I thought I would never go back to Egypt. I thought New York was going to be my new home.
Because of the Kuwaiti parties? Is that...
No, I was in Alexandria.
There were no Kuwaiti parties there.
No Kuwaiti
There's no equivalent of Kuwaiti parties in Alexandria?
Not where I live.
That's why Alexandria is not Cairo. See, now
I live in front of a park. It's very, very quiet.
And I have no friends there. You don't live near my friends.
No, I don't live next to anyone in Alexandria. Everyone around me is like... very little people live around me in Alexandria, but it's great. Anyways.
Okay.
No, it's... When I left, I was like... It was suffocating. Egypt was suffocating for me. Everything was suffocating. It was like everyone was in your business, everyone knew everything. And then I went to New York and I'm like, but you're so alone. And this business, like this sense of like the social fabric.
Isolation.
Exactly.
And COVID obviously amplified that in a huge way.
Thank God I wasn't in New York in COVID.
Yeah, and I think people that lived in the States and generally during COVID, in my view at least, suffered disproportionately more than some other countries, because, as you said, the social fabric is frayed and it is so individualistic.
Exactly.
Which works when your main goal is to make money and to kind of succeed in life, from a financial standpoint. Doesn't work if your goal is a bit of social cohesion and to actually exist amongst a community. 100%.
And if there's one word, it's community. Like, this community is something that you constantly have and you live with, and you like. There's no way on any random day, on a random Tuesday in Cairo at 7 p.m., if I want to go and have a cup of coffee with someone, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not like,
despite the traffic,
despite the noise, despite everything, it's also someone's going to be available.
Yes. I think that is very unique to Cairo. There are probably other cities that have this. I would imagine maybe a place like Mexico City actually does have this.
I think maybe
some Latin countries.
When I went to Mexico City, I found it super similar to Cairo.
أنا كمان نفس
I
الحاجة.
really enjoyed it.
Which is why now I don't know if I should reveal this, but I watch some of these Mexican telenovelas. It's fantastic. They're basically Zamalek, but in like Mexico City.
Yeah, in Condesa.
Yeah. Exactly. I love them.
I honestly loved Mexico City, and I felt like everyone's like so dangerous. I went there and I had a great time, and it's totally somewhere I could imagine myself being for a prolonged period of time. And there's so much affinity and a cultural
Yeah, I think Latin countries. I felt the same thing in Rio, by the way. Very similar.
Yeah, I've
parts
never
of
been
Rio,
to Rio.
very, very similar, and it felt like that social cohesion. The city may be at times dangerous, maybe this or that, but people find a way communally to support each other.
Exactly.
You get this in Cairo or in Egypt in general, all over the place, and I find that it's very, very unique to where we're from, and it makes it very attractive.
Do you find that here in Dubai?
Different, very different, because it's such a larger population of expats. So I think the differences often are amplified. Whereas for us, I think what that does is no matter of social strata, religion, etc., it brings you together.
Yes.
There's an Egyptianness, frankly, that brings you together.
Absolutely.
Here, it's a little bit more complicated because I think what brings you together is all being in Dubai. But Farah, myself, Chirag, you come from very different places. So I think it's a different, it's a very different process, to be honest. And you're often out of your comfort zone. That may be good in some ways, but in Cairo, obviously, for me, it's much easier to find your comfort zone. You slip right in.
Yeah. You can leave for like months and come back, and you're right there.
I take my kids now back, and I haven't lived there physically for a long time. Doesn't matter. Even they slip right in some funny way.
You know, every single person, like this is something I didn't mention in the book, like the whole club mentality, like sporting club or Gezira club mentality.
Yeah, that would have been a very interesting lens.
Yeah, but the thing is, like at the end of the day, a tourist is buying this book, and they're not gonna access like Gezira.
How commercially minded of you.
No, I'm like, yeah, I am.
But it's interesting you said this. You know, when we were commissioning some work for the Lighthouse from one of the artists, Egyptian artists, and we were looking at archival images, I actually brought up to Alea Hamza, our mutual friend at Gypsum.
Who is currently showing at Basel, an amazing Egyptian artist.
Amazing. Shout out to Alea.
Definitely shout out to Alea.
We're very proud of her and her artists.
Hind Samir.
Yes, 100%. She was showing, beautiful, by the way, the work of Hind Samir. But I brought up some of the archival images from the Gezira Sporting Club and other clubs because they're such an important fabric of part of the Egyptian fabric in Cairo and Alexandria, I'm sure.
So in Cairo, you have Gezira, and Alexandria, you have Sporting. And this is our childhood. And it's like the reoccurring element that keeps...
And that's another reinforcing communal mechanism.
Absolutely. And like, there's nothing better than having your child like spend their afternoons there, or
entire days, the weekends, entire days,
everything. And you're you're an activity, you're
sports, you
outdoors.
Eat there, you hang out with your friends, you go to the cinema, everything.
And it's non-pretentious. In a very pretentious way.
Yes. And I was going to just say,
maybe Gezira Sporting in Alexandria is completely lacks any pretension. Gezira does have an element of that, but thankfully I am a member from Alexandria.
Okay. Okay, Sheffield.
كارثة.
من ناحية she has pretension, من ناحية she shows off her membership casually.
No, I'm not showing off but like being from Alexandria, you wouldn't have had a membership in Gezira because you're not
very privileged.
No.
And now after the book, I feel like they have to give you a membership.
Gezira, I don't think they really care. Not at all. No. My grandparents are actually from Cairo. They moved to Alexandria. That's the funny. My paternal side of my family is from Cairo, and they all moved to Alexandria in the 40s.
Did you mentioned something earlier? You were talking about Egyptian business, the business community, and many of them coming from Alexandria. Do you think that's a bit of what we see with the Christian minority in Egypt? Because they're a minority, they have to work kind of extra. You see it minorities everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
In some ways, they have to work harder. Do you feel that maybe is the case with Alexandria being the kind of little sister of Cairo? People from there feel they have to prove themselves more. This social phenomenon exists all over the world.
Yeah, I think I never thought of it in that way. But I also think people tend to forget that Alexandria is the largest port city of Egypt. 75% of goods are coming in through Alexandria. So essentially, if you were a trader or you were someone who was
that's a good
import
point.
and export, Alexandria would have been where you started.
You have the trader mentality
Exactly.
growing up there.
Definitely. A bit like Beirut, where
Or
there's
Jeddah, where
or
people say,
exactly.
you know, the families there have a bit more of that openness and trader
Exactly.
mentality. They grew up kind of around the port.
Around the port, and I
Beirut,
think
yeah.
the port has that impact.
I didn't think of
and
that
effect.
element.
But that's just my take. And I think definitely being in this import export, in and out sort of mentality, and remember Alexandria then, and a lot of these families have left Alexandria, was a melting pot. It was super, super international. There were a lot of Greeks, there were a lot of Italians, there were a lot of Armenians. It was essentially a big hodgepodge of different people.
Is any of that left, by the way?
Very, very small.
Very little. No, not just the people, the feeling.
I think architecturally.
Only architecturally, okay.
Yeah, I think you have like tiny pockets, but you know what's amazing? Like you can still see the signs on the buildings, and those are the ones that like I really hope they stay.
The same way we think about Groppi, مثلا.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But like you still have these signs, and they're all across downtown, and I really hope they remain intact, some way, somehow.
I hope so too. So I want to move on to something adjacent to this, which is your obviously career in the arts. What brought that up? Because you do specialize in some ways in Egyptian art, although you're a Middle East specialist. So why did you choose that as your vocation?
So I graduated in 2008.
Okay.
Mega financial crisis. Bear Stearns had collapsed.
Well, I remember. I was in New York the day it collapsed.
You were in New York?
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw them walking out of the building.
So I was graduating the month Bear Stearns was collapsing.
Yeah, so was I.
It's
fine. Let's just roll with it. It's fine. Okay. I think we should just move on and, let's move.
So I'm graduating from Barnard, May 2008. Bear Stearns is collapsing, complete collapse. And I'm applying for jobs right, left, and center. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to get a job. And I had this thing, as a non-American, you have this thing called OPT. So you can work in the US for a year. Essentially, what I really wanted to do was I thought I wanted to go to law school. So I thought that I'm going to work for a year,
and then go to
take my LSAT, go to law school, and then figure it out. And I study for my LSAT, and I thoroughly dislike it. I do not enjoy it at all. And I can't get a single job because like the world is in meltdown. Okay. I am a bit of a Nepo baby. So I get a job at Sotheby's, and
I'm glad you admit to it.
No, I'm
That's
admitting.
Great. You own it.
I own it. It's
Khalas.
fine.
That's fine. We love Nepo babies.
15 years later, I sort of proved myself.
I think you've paid your dues. Yeah, you've paid your dues. Yeah.
So I get this job at Sotheby's, and I tell my mom, I remember, I'm like, listen, I'm only doing this for 1 year because I want to be in New York and I want to experience living in New York and working in New York. I don't know anything about the art world. I studied political science and Middle Eastern studies. Either I'm going to work in politics or I'm going to go into journalism.
So what grabbed you?
So when I first started, they placed me in Orientalist art. And being a Middle Eastern studies student, learning about Edward Said, it was like, oh my God, Orientalism.
Life-changing.
It's like, you're supposed to hate this.
Yeah.
And then every single person who's buying Orientalist art is a Middle Eastern client. And I'm like, oh my God, what would Edward Said say?
Yes.
He would like die.
Yeah.
Because he's against this.
Yeah.
And I'm like cataloging all these Orientalist paintings.
Yeah.
And I'm like selling them to a client.
They're all Egyptian.
And
they're all Arab.
They're all
it's hilarious.
And it's hilarious.
We're like, you're not supposed to look at this like that.
Exactly.
I know the feeling.
And I'm like, and this was everything that I was taught. And I'm like, this is so confusing.
That's brilliant. I have to say, to me, if there is one book that has had the most effect on my life, it's Orientalism.
Yeah.
Hands down. Oh, by far. It's actually complete mindset change. Like to me, it was literally the moment I read it, my entire viewpoint changed. And all of these feelings that were there were finally sort of legitimized by this book and this guy. Amazing.
Edward Said is brilliant.
Yeah.
I don't know if have you ever read his essay about belly dancing?
I read most of his work.
This guy,
if I can, except for the very dense stuff where he goes into
just
literary
also
criticism.
Another plug. He went to school in Alexandria, and he was
did?
born
That's
in Alexandria.
true.
He went to Victoria College, a great institution from a
It's not a
bygone
plug.
area.
It's great. It's fact.
Yeah, it's fact.
So back to you. Sorry.
So yeah, I'm like in the middle of this like craziness because I'm supposed to hate this art, but I'm selling it, cataloging it, and it's doing really well. And Sotheby's asks me to stay on after this year, and they get me a visa and all of that, and I start doing different stages, like do like different rotations. So I moved to jewelry, which I like thrive in. I'm like, oh my God, I get to wear a tiara. I get to wear all this amazing jewelry.
Yeah, you think you're Nefertiti. Yeah,
I
get
think
it.
I am Nefertiti,
Yeah.
essentially. Maybe Cleopatra, since she's also from Alexandria. But
That's a good point.
That's a good point.
Fine.
So I enjoy that. And then I'm like, but I actually want to focus on the Middle East. And I'm in New York, and New York's so far away. At that point, all of the Middle East business was being run out of London. So I had asked to be moved to London, and they said no. So I quit. June 2010, I quit.
I did not know that.
I moved back to Egypt. Great timing.
Yeah.
June 2010.
Revolution around the corner.
But the economy was doing so well.
Sah.
And I was like, great time to be back. I'll figure something out. I don't know what I'll do, blah, blah, blah. Everything was great. And then Sotheby's calls me up and they're like, do you want to come back and work for us? So I'm essentially unemployed for 2 months. And I start working again for Sotheby's, September 2010, but remote working. So based out of Cairo, covering the region and reporting.
Which you've done ever since.
Yeah, I've done that ever since. And now I am associated to the Dubai office, so I am technically part of the Dubai team.
I know, but you're still in Egypt, which I find
Still in
remarkable, not just because of the things, circumstances in Egypt, but I think more importantly to someone also, I'm saying this as an Egyptian, as an art lover, and as your friend, I think you do a fantastic ambassadorial role. You really play a very important role. I mean that. So many people have discovered, not just Egyptian art, Egypt, in fact, through you. And through your lens. I mean that. I mean, people have, how many trips have you organized all over Egypt, from the West Oasis to Fayoum to Alexandria, etc. So, I mean, if I were Sotheby's, I hope they're listening, the value is not just, understanding the art and selling the art. You've really, I think, made a lot of people look at Egypt very differently. And I think that's a huge testament really to who you are.
Thank you so much.
No, I mean that.
That's very kind. But I also I'm an extremely curious individual. I have this voracious appetite for discovering things that I don't know.
But being on the ground, I'm just going back, that gave you also, I think, a certain
edge,
legitimacy as well, as opposed to the person flying in from Dubai or London or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Because it essentially is home.
Yeah.
Like I am not discovering, I am like playing it at home. Like it's your playground. You're just enjoying the things that exist in your playground. And there's so much there. And
have you seen the taste change a bit? Because one of the things that we hear a lot, obviously, and I'm much more adjacent to this world than you're in it, is that not just Egyptian collectors, but generally speaking, most buyers have always focused on modern Egyptian art and modern Middle Eastern art, and it's much, much harder to get people to move to the contemporary, despite the talent that we spoke about earlier. Is that still the case? It has still a struggle?
Yeah, very much so.
It is.
Why
do you think that's the case? Is it nostalgia element again?
I don't think it's a nostalgia
or actually quality of work. In other words, Wanli and Said's are arguably higher quality.
No, I think the quality of contemporary art in Egypt is fantastic.
I agree.
Wael Shawqi, Bassem Magdi, Mahmoud Khalid.
100%.
There's so many names I can talk about. Maha Ma'moon. Fantastic artists.
Names,
fantastic artists who will hold their ground in front of any modern artist.
I agree.
I think the biggest problem is a lot of these collectors have an old school vision of the format. So they're not really excited to go to photography.
But it's odd because those were like our parents' generation. Now my generation is like in their 40s and 50s. Yani they're no longer kids. And many of them, so I would have thought, I'm just interested in this point.
They should have switched.
مش حتى switched, but like, for example, I'm interested in both. I 100% could today acquire or appreciate a piece of modern art, but I also have a huge interest in contemporary art.
The global trend is still obsessed with painting. That is not unique to Egypt. People are obsessed with painting.
So, but are the painters amongst the new generation, we're talking about Hind Sabri earlier and others, are those then rising to prominence? I feel like abroad, yes.
I think slowly.
Okay.
I think slowly it will happen and there will be a huge uptake.
To what's needed? More people like you?
I think there needs to be more people to visit more homes where contemporary art is on display, where they can see contemporary art can and I don't think they see that a lot.
No, they don't.
They don't see you know what, this is an amazing Wael Shawqi, with Mahmoud Saeed,
صح,
with
paired up.
Bassem, they don't
مظبوط.
see it. So as long as they don't see it and they can't visualize it,
That's
then,
a very good
then
point.
it's not going to happen. A lot of the things I hear is that, well, it's not going to match. Well, it doesn't need to match. Art never needs to
لا
match.
المصريين we have to match.
We have to match. It
كنبة
kills me.
كنبة.
كنبة بالضبط. It kills me. It
Yeah,
really
yeah,
kills
yeah,
me.
I know. That's
So I think once you have more examples of people going to collectors' homes where they can see how contemporary art is extremely livable, and it's something you can not only live with, but you can like
Mix and match.
mix and match.
I mean, look, I'll be very honest. In my own experience, even you know this, I was careful. Like I created sections. So I'll have like, and only now, and I've been, doing this for a while, I frankly feel I'm confident to start mixing and matching. And even then, if I bring someone like yourself or some of my friends that are in the art world, I get very nervous. And it's not an easy step.
That's the beauty of it. It's okay.
صح.
And you can make mistakes. We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
There's no
Well,
right.
I don't make mistakes, but yeah.
Yeah, you went to Harvard twice.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you for mentioning that. It
You didn't go
hasn't
to-
been mentioned yet on that
You
podcast.
did not go to
So, yeah,
Harvard
yeah.
once. You went to Harvard twice.
Yeah, twice.
I
Thank
only
you.
sadly went to Columbia once,
I
but
know.
that's not good enough.
I know, it's okay.
It's
I love you.
okay.
I love you nevertheless.
I know.
Yeah.
You have to love me. It's
Yes.
hard not to love me. But essentially, it's okay. You know what I mean? Okay, so I'll give you a simple example. My grandmother, very kindly, so she wanted to give me, when I got married, she has a small Mahmoud Saeed sketch, prep work, and she wanted to give it to me as a result of getting married. And then she thought, oh my God, she's getting older. She's not getting married. Give it to her like for... before I
For
die.
her birthday.
Before I die. So she gives me this wonderful Mahmoud Saeed. So I have the Mahmoud Saeed, and under it there's an amazing American artist, Jesse Homer French. Then I have a massive contemporary painting by this African artist, and then I have two Muhammad Ahmed Ibrahims.
Yeah.
And it works.
And you feel totally fine, yeah.
And it totally works.
Yeah, I agree with
It's
you.
not like, there's not like, oh my God, there's a class. It works.
But it's what you said. I think people need to go to more homes, see this,
Exactly.
to feel that it's... And we're not there yet.
Yeah.
We
will get there.
We'll get there.
For
We'll get
sure.
there. This has been wide-ranging and fantastic. Mai, Mabruk, honestly, the book is great. You are great. Keep at it.
Thank you.
Keep playing this very important ambassadorial role. And we can't wait now that you finish this project for your next project. Do you have anything in mind? Is there anything in the horizon?
Well, I have auctions.
That you have many auctions.
I need to sell.
Yeah. Tiaras. More tiaras.
More tiara. No, honestly, we have fantastic things coming up. We have, for the first time, so our biggest thing in London is the June marquee sales, so the June evening sales.
Yes.
And we are featuring Salwa Rawda Shu'air, who's a Lebanese modernist, and she's going to be part of the evening sale. So that's something we're celebrating. We're very excited about. So to have Salwa Rawda Shu'air next to some of the greatest modernists and contemporary artists, that Western modernists and contemporary artists, is a huge achievement, and we're so excited about it. And it's happening June 27th. So that's my next big project.
big thing.
And then on to the next.
Bravo. Thank you, Mai.
Thank
you
you.
so much. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Lighthouse Conversations. I'm Hashem Montasser. We're produced by Chirag Desai, and our content director is Farah Al-Sharif. You can connect with us on Instagram at the Lighthouse_podcast. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.